crafters, it's Kathy here from Scrap and Bean. I'm going to show you today how to put some color to your chipboard. So we're going to take a plain piece of raw chipboard and then we're going to color it up and even add a little bit of sparkle to it. So to get started, I'm going to use today some Dylusions paint, give it some red color, and then we're going to add some sparkle using the Nuvo sparkle product. With the Dylusions paint, I like to put it on using a sponge. So the first thing I do, I like to work with these sponges. They come 3 in a pack, and to get more mileage out of them, because I don't like to clean my sponges, I'd rather just use them and throw them away. I take a sponge like this and I cut it right into 4 pieces. So now I have enough to last me for 4 different colors. And on a project like this, the paint goes a long way. So you just use a little bit of paint. I generally work right out of the lid for the product rather than out of the pot because I tend to dip a little bit too deep there. And today I'm using some chipboard from Southern Ridge Trading, which is a Canadian company, so we're really proud to support Canadian manufacturers and made from Canadian products, I might add. Also, their chipboard is a very high quality, very compressed and dense chipboard, so it holds products like the paint and other wet products like sprays really well, rather than coming apart. So you can feel free to experiment and use whatever kind of moist products on their chipboard that you'd like. So anyways, for this piece of chipboard here, we're going to start with dipping the sponge into the paint. Now I'm going to take some and work from the lid here. Just a little bit goes a long ways, and I do like to work on this Tim Holtz craft mat because it's really easy to clean up. So I'm just going to sponge some on. Nice thin layer until you've covered your whole piece of chipboard. Now I generally let this air dry, and the reason I do is because some paints, when you use them, if you heat set them to try and speed up your drying process, sometimes the paints will bubble, other paints won't. So it really depends on what you use. So I just get in the habit of allowing that to air dry. It's such a thin coat of paint that it doesn't take very long to air dry. And while I'm just going to set that aside and let that dry, I'm going to show you another piece of raw chipboard, and we're going to put 2 different layers on there. The first one, I'm going to add a little bit of the paint, and you see the last time I dabbed it to give a nice texture. Here for a base coat, I'm just going to smear it on. So be aware that when you do smear or brush, you could get some strokes, and if you want to get rid of those strokes afterwards, you can just give it some dabs so that you have more of a even texture rather than seeing any strokes. Now of course you'll notice when I'm touching this, look, when I lift my fingers, I've got some fingerprint marks in my paint too, so you may want to work with tweezers holding it, or just at the very end do what I did there, cover up your fingerprints with some fresh paint, and now just let that air dry. So we're going to set that aside. I'm going to go back to our heart here, and I want to make it sparkly. So a couple different things that you can do when you're working with putting some sparkle or a second layer on is just do parts of it or do the entire thing. Now in this project here, I use the same heart from Southern Ridge. I put this red sparkle over the entire thing, so it's all got a little bit of sparkle. If you can see in there, lots and lots of sparkle on there, and I liked that for a bit of a romantic project there. And what I'm using is this Nuvo Crystal Drops. This color happens to be Ruby Slippers. So it's a nice red and got lots of sparkle in there. So I'll start with just putting some on this little scroll, and actually you can see where I have a little piece of chipboard in there. I'm just going to poke that out with my scissors. You can use your fingernail or a tool, a poker. There we go. So I'll add some sparkle on. Now you can add this directly with your the tip of your container, or you can spread it with a sponge, or if you really like, you can just spread it with your finger if you don't mind being a little bit messy. So there's one idea, is just to add some sparkle on your curves. You can leave it like this where it's a little bit raised and dimensional. You can see where it's raised on there. Or you can just take it and flatten it out and give you an even layer of sparkle. I'm going to add a little bit more. So I'm just, on this particular one, I'm just going to add sparkle where all these nice swirls are. I love swirls, and they're so delicate. This Karen from Southern Ridge does a really nice job of cutting very delicate pieces with a chipboard, and I just really love that look. There we go. So it's all sparkled, and then I would just set it aside to dry. Now, generally, something like this, the Nuvo Crystal Drops, or if you use Stickles, very similar, takes quite a while to dry, depending on how thick you put it on. This is quite thin, so those sparkles are going to dry reasonably quickly. But that'll give you a look at, show you the heart the right way. And there you can see the sparkles on there, hopefully. Nothing else, you can see the sparkles on my nail now. Okay, so we'll set that aside to dry. What I'm going to do with that one when it is dry is add it to my scrapbook layout. So if I can just move the rest of my mess off camera, I'll show you what where I'm going to put that. I have a 2-page layout here, all ready for my final embellishment. I don't know if you can get the whole page in there. You don't quite see the whole page, but see this little empty spot here? It needs some sparkle, and because it's a romance layout, I want to keep it romantic with hearts. So I'm just going to do that. When I go to glue that on there now, I like to use this Art Glitter Dries Clear glue. Obviously dry clear, because if I make a little bit of a mess with it and some of the glue sneaks out, then at least it's going to be clear, not white, and you can see it. The beauty of this Dries Clear glue by Art Glitter is that you can get these little metal tips that go on the top of your jar, and the cap is really just a pin. So it's a pinhole size that comes out of there, and you can get that in really narrow areas. So when you're gluing something like these tiny little pieces, you can get your glue right where you want it to go. You can just put out a tiny little sliver of glue, so you can make a pretty nice job of that. So I'll put a little bit of glue behind there. Even these little tips here, you can get some glue in there. And simply set that down on your project where you want it to go. And there we're done. So I'll show you on another piece of chipboard here. This one that we painted earlier with our sponge and the Dylusions paint. This is also a piece of chipboard from Southern Ridge. Same high quality that we had on the heart. So this is dry now. That paint dries just that fast because we put a very thin layer on there, and yet we've got really good coverage. So what I'm going to do is put half of this in sparkle just to show you the difference that the sparkle is making. Now you could also use your sponge. I'm just going to cut off my messy piece and put that in the garbage. Get a little bit more use out of my sponge here. And there's some sparkle. Okay, if I want more, a little bit thicker layer on there. I'm just going to put sparkle in the bottom half so that you can see the difference between where it's just paint and where it's got the sparkle. It really does make a difference adding that sparkle on there. And with this Nuvo Clear Drops, the bottle with this nice little applicator on the top, you don't have to just smudge or cover things. I'm just going to make a couple of pearls here. So there you go, is a pearl drop on there. You can make your pearls different sizes. And of course these are all full of glitter, because we love glitter, right? So there you go. Another way to add a little embellishment or decoration is by these little pearl drops. And they are dimensional. You can see on there they're dimensional. And of course, because here it's so thin, it'll dry reasonably quickly. These pearls, they're quite thick. They're like about 1/8 of an inch thick. So that's going to take a little while to dry. And again, I don't heat set this stuff because it does tend to bubble. The product itself will start to bubble. If we want to avoid that, then I'm just going to let that sit aside and let it air dry. And with your chipboard, if you're a little shy to get started with adding some color to it. You can also leave your chipboard natural. So depending on your project that you're working on, I'm going to show you this layout here where we have also used some pieces of the Southern Ridge chipboard. Here I use the snowflakes for a winter layout, and I've just tucked in a couple. On this layout, the background with this natural colored wood here, I thought went really nice with the natural colored chipboard. So we've just left that on the layout as natural chipboard. Here's their whole layout project. Lots of embellishments on there, and this is actually available at Scrap and Bean as a kit. So in the kit, you get all of these papers that are used. You get, and there's several layers of papers there. You get all the flowers. There's several on the 2 pages. Your skates. You get the Southern Ridge chipboard in several of the snowflakes, and the instructions and photos of step to step how to put this all together. So all of the projects that we did today, these supplies are all available at Scrap and Bean. And I do encourage you that when you're looking for chipboard, especially if you're going to be adding some paint or other wet sprays products onto it, that you look for a good quality chipboard. I highly recommend the Southern Ridge brand. It stays together really well, and of course we do like to support Canadian products. Yay, Canada. So have some fun with your chipboard. If you're a little shy at first, leave it plain and natural looking. Goes really well on your projects. And when you get a little ready to experiment a little more, try out some dilution paints or any other acrylic paints, water-based paints that you have. Add some sparkle, or come in and talk to us at Scrap and Bean and we'll give you some other ideas. Happy crafting.